Have you ever felt that cold rush of fear crawl up your spine? That moment when your heart races, your palms sweat, and your mind starts spinning worst-case scenarios? What if I told you that this feeling, this fear that holds so many of us back, could actually become your greatest source of power? Today, we're diving deep into the psychology of fear and discovering how some of the world's most successful people don't just overcome their fears, they harness them. Stay with me because by the end of this video, you'll have practical tools to transform your relationship with fear forever. Let's start with what's happening in your brain when fear strikes. When encountering something threatening, your amygdala, this tiny almond-shaped part of your brain, triggers your fight or flight response. In just milliseconds, your body floods with adrenaline and cortisol. Your breathing quickens, your pupils dilate, and blood rushes to your muscles. This response evolved to keep us alive when we were facing predators thousands of years ago. The problem? In today's world, this same sys. But here's what's fascinating. Neuroscientists have discovered that the brain circuitry for fear sits right next to the circuitry for excitement and motivation. That's why the physical sensations of fear and excitement feel so similar. The difference often comes down to one thing: how we interpret those sensations. And that interpretation is something we can control. Not all fear is created equal. Understanding which type you're experiencing is the first step to transforming it. First, there's survival fear, the kind that keeps you from walking down dark alleys or touching hot stoves. This fear is healthy and protective. Then there's social fear, fear of judgment, rejection, or embarrassment. This is the fear that stops you from speaking up in meetings or trying new things in public. Next is fear of failure, perhaps the most limiting type. It's not just about failing at a task, but what that failure might say about you as a person. And finally, there's fear of the unknown, the anxiety we feel when facing uncertainty or change. Take a moment right now to think about a fear that's been holding you back. Which category does it fall into? Understanding this will help you apply the right techniques to transform it. Now for the exciting part. Turning fear into power starts with reframing. Consider this: nearly every successful person reports experiencing fear regularly. The difference? They've learned to interpret fear differently. The physiological response of fear is almost identical to excitement. By simply relabeling the sensation as excitement rather than anxiety, studies show performance immediately improves by up to 30%. This isn't just positive thinking, it's neurochemical reality. When you say to yourself, "I'm excited," instead of, "I'm terrified," you're actually shifting your brain from threat response to opportunity response. Let me show you a simple technique. Next time fear strikes, try this 3-step process. Acknowledge the fear. I notice I'm feeling afraid. Relabel it. This is my body getting energized. Redirect it. This energy will help me perform better. Beyond reframing, there's another powerful approach: strategic exposure. Your comfort zone is like a muscle. It only grows when stretched. Psychologists call this exposure therapy, but I prefer to think of it as courage training. The key is gradual, intentional exposure to what scares you, in manageable doses. Beyond reframing, there's another powerful approach: strategic exposure. Your comfort zone is like a muscle. It only grows when stretched. Psychologists call this exposure therapy, but I prefer to think of it as courage training. The key is gradual, intentional exposure to what scares you, in manageable doses. For example, if public speaking terrifies you, don't start by giving a TED Talk. Begin by sharing an idea in a small team meeting, then gradually work your way up. Each exposure reduces the fear response and builds confidence. It's not about being fearless, it's about building your fear tolerance muscle. Try coupling exposure with this box breathing technique. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system, calming your fear response during exposure. Sometimes our fears aren't what they seem on the surface. The most transformative approach is to investigate them deeply. Try this powerful journaling exercise. 1. Write down your specific fear. 2. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? 3. Then ask, could I handle that? 4. Finally, what might I gain by facing this fear? Interview subject: I was terrified of changing careers. When I really investigated, I realized I wasn't afraid of the new job. I was afraid of disappointing my parents who had pushed me toward my previous field. Once I understood that, I could address the real issue. That's the power of fear investigation. It reveals what's really holding us back. Often, it's not the fear itself, but the meaning we've attached to it. The people who achieve extraordinary things aren't fearless, they're fear alchemists. They've learned to transform fear into fuel. Let's recap what we've learned. Fear is a physiological response that can be reinterpreted. Understanding your specific type of fear helps you address it. Reframing fear as excitement changes your performance. Strategic exposure builds your fear tolerance muscle. Investigating fear reveals deeper insights for transformation. Now it's your turn. This week, I challenge you to identify one fear that's holding you back and apply just one technique from this video. Share your experience in the comments below, and let me know which fears you're working to transform. If you found this valuable, hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss our next video on mastering your mindset. And remember, fear isn't your enemy. It might just be your greatest untapped power source.